Yo, what's up? My name is Inferno Jim, and I really love Guilty Gear Strive. Like, really love Strive. And I'm also kind of alright at it. So I think I'm the perfect person to talk about and kind of review the Guilty Gear Strive Season 3 DLC characters, especially since Season 4 is right around the corner. Or something like that, I'm not really sure. Now, let me explain what the idea for this video is. First and foremost, I'm only talking about the characters, no Wild Assault or General Balance. This is strictly about the individual characters. If you want to see someone complain about Wild Assault, go on Twitch and click on any top level stream. You're sure to find it.
I think they should just remove Wild Assault. I want to play a fighting game.
Second, we will be discussing and kind of reviewing them based on their general gameplay, how fun they are, where they fit in the meta, the designs, a tiny bit about the music, and then finally, comparing them to their previous incarnations from past games. Sounds good? Alright, well, without further ado, let's get into it. And first up is Johnny is a kinda hybrid mid-range zoner and set play character in Strive, but that description doesn't really do him justice. He's a character that thrives in the mid-range, with fantastic pokes that reach far, come out fast, and consistently lead into knockdowns or combos using resources. His signature mechanic is his Mistfinder stance, where he readies his sword in its sheath, and once he releases the button, a lightning-fast sword slash comes out, with 3 different options depending on which button you held. New to Strive is his turn-up mechanic, where he can throw cards, and if he hits a card with Mistfinder, it creates a second hitbox that allows for better conversions, is plus on block, and guard crushes the opponent. Using Mistfinder and Turn Up, Johnny can set up terrifying offensive situations where he stacks plus frames, or he can even set up high-low 50-50s by going for instant air downwards Mistfinder, which hits overhead and can be converted off with meter or if you have a card on you. On top of that, Johnny has pretty strong neutral skip in Vault Deal that when RC'd sets up for another terrifying 50-50 high-low guess situation. This all sounds pretty strong, but it is balanced by Johnny's extremely detrimental flaw. He cannot dash block. For those unaware, every character in Strive can, during their dash, cancel their dash with either blocking or a normal. Johnny can't do either, which makes his 18-frame dash extremely committal, as he can find himself dashing straight into the defeat screen if he isn't careful. With the most recent patch, he can now cancel his dash into a jump, but it doesn't change the fact that he is missing a key defensive and offensive tool that almost every character in the game has. Currently in the West, Johnny is considered a pretty weak character, often finding himself at the bottom of tier list near Zato. But in Asia, they seem to believe he's a high tier character, so people are still unsure of how good he is, even after about a year now. Personally, my opinion is somewhere between the East and West. I think he's a solid mid-tier, but what do you all think? I think more important than that is how fun he is. And let me just say, Johnny is fun. I mean, look at the guy, he just oozes style and everything he does just feels so satisfying. Boxing people out with your huge normals and converting into strong set play situations is unbelievably fun. So honestly, I think they knocked it out of the park in that aspect. Also, his theme is great, so like, what else could you want? Now, for the final word about Johnny, I want to talk about his older incarnations, to see how well he was adapted from XX and Xrd, as he was in both. Now, I don't play Johnny in either game, but here's my assessment on how well he was adapted. Johnny in old games is a master of neutral, boasting huge pokes and strong conversions, especially in Xrd, and in a lot of ways that hasn't really changed one bit. In both previous games, he also has access to an instant overhead within Senga, which was air only in XX, and instant air down Mistfinder in Xrd, so it all feels really similar to Strive. In Xrd specifically too, Johnny has access to Zweihander YRC, which is very similar to Vault Deal YRC, but way stronger of course, in which he lunges the opponent, puts out a projectile that hits the ground, YRCs it, and sets up for a high-low 50-50. Sound familiar? Johnny in Strive even keeps the flaw of not being able to dash block from old Guilty Gear, but in those games, his dash was invul at his feet and airborne, so it wasn't bad at all. The biggest difference, of course, though, is the lack of coins and Mistfinder level ups, which are definitely missed, I can't lie, but Deal and Turnip feel like they're trying to emulate the feeling of that mechanic, and I can't say they do a terrible job at that goal. All in all, I give Johnny an A+ in terms of DLC characters. He feels fun to play, fun to fight, fun to watch, not too strong or weak, and he keeps a lot from his previous appearances and modernizes them in a decently additive way, in my opinion. Alright, next up is
Time for Elphelt Valentine to sing her heart out!
Now, before we get into it, I just want to say that I mained Elphelt in Xrd, and I secondary her in Strive, which means I am very opinionated about her. I'm not going to fully go into it here, but if you're interested, let me know. I'd love to make a vid just talking about her. Anyways, if I say anything bad about this character, no, it is from love. With that being said, describing Elphelt is a bit tough, because on the surface, she is an all-rounder character, with decent pokes, high mobility, and unique projectiles. But anyone who's played versus her knows the true stars of the show are Chain Lollipop, aka her Rekka, and Bomb Bomb Chocolat, aka Pineberry. Elphelt's Rekka is an honestly pretty insane move on paper. It's a Rekka that starts up decently quickly, has 3 possible follow-ups. One is an unreactable overhead, one is an unreactable low, and the other is an ender. Yes, you heard that correct. Her Rekka allows for an unreactable high-low 50-50 with no setup required. And if you block the first 50-50, she can go for another high-low, reset the Rekka, or go for a safe ender. Her second best move is Pineberry, where she hops in the air and drops a grenade on the ground to cover her approach. This move allows her to go for a high-low or left-right mix on most knockdowns, and hop over certain moves in neutral for a big punish with just a pressure reset. Hearing this sounds like Elphelt is this broken character, but there's a big asterisk with all of this. For the Rekka, she can't go into it safely off any of her normals, as for every normal but 5H, she can be 6P'd out of it. And even those normals leave a gap for characters to reversal out of. For such a strong tool, it definitely needs some drawbacks, but unfortunately for Elphelt, she doesn't have very many other ways to secure hits, as her strike throw is a bit below average due to her really not being built for it, and even when she gets a hit with Rekka, does very minimal damage, at least without meter. But it's not all doom and gloom for her. She has a pretty alright neutral skip in 214K that can be spaced to be plus on block, and she gets great reward for counter hits on pokes. And, versus characters without meters reversals, she has very strong pressure using Rekka. Combining all that with her great move speed, she's not a bad character by any means, but certainly one that often finds herself struggling when she can't start her offense. Unfortunately, Elphelt also has below average defense and low HP, so she is susceptible to being robbed, but in an ideal world, it's a small price to pay for canned in 50-50 mix. Now, both Japan and the West seem to think Elphelt is one of the worst characters in the game, and as someone who plays her, I partially agree. I don't think she can't compete, but in a roster full of strong characters, she just might happen to be a bit less strong than most, but nowhere near unplayable. Also, random side note, but this move absolutely sucks. Buffet Arxis, please, it's really funny. Anyways, back to the regularly scheduled programming. Now, just like with Johnny, let's talk about fun. Elphelt is in a very unique situation, because fun with her feels like a seesaw or a pendulum. When she works, I get to do Rekka and Pineberry and she feels great, but my opponent isn't having any fun. And when my opponent 6Ps my Rekka, or air throws my Pineberry, I'm not having any fun. This isn't at all unique to Elphelt, but it feels important enough for her to point it out here. Now her design though is an absolute 10 out of 10 home run design, for the new rocker aesthetic, the pink jacket, the bouquet-esque shirt. It's perfect in every way. She's just the best. And of course her theme is one of the best in the game too. Now, it's time to talk about her previous version. And let's just cut to the chase. This isn't the same character, gameplay-wise. Xrd Elphelt is a stance character with 2 stances. One being a sniper stance with a reticle that you can control, with the other being a shotgun stance, which is broken, but we're not talking about that. and it makes her pressure very threatening, especially in the corner. Elphelt also had a very unique projectile in Pineberry that acted like a time bomb, which was also very broken. But anyways, I'm sure you could tell this is not even a similar character. Elphelt keeps only a few normals from this version and 0 special moves, and isn't even the same archetype. With all of that said though, that's not the end of the world. New games should have new things, and if I want to go play Expert Elphelt, I can just go play Expert Elphelt. So, while it's not an objectively bad thing, I do think the difference is interesting to talk about, and maybe I'm just a little salty with how they did my girl. Anyways, with all that in mind, I think I will give Elphelt a solid B in terms of DLC characters. While she's fun to play, she lacks a lot of depth and fun counterplay for the opponent, but her design is amazing and her vibes are immaculate, so I cannot complain at all. And next up is
Wisdom, patience.
Abba is an install character with 2 distinct modes, Jealous Rage and Normal Mode. In Jealous Rage, she is arguably the best character in the game, with amazing movement, damage, and offense, but this absurd win condition is gated by one key mechanic, Jealousy Gauge. Abba starts every round in Normal Mode, and with half of her Jealousy Gauge filled. I'll get into Normal Mode in a second, but to get out of Normal Mode, she needs to either hit her key grab special move, hit her reversal super, or if she has 25% or more Jealousy Gauge, she can install manually if given time and space in neutral. How much time, you might ask? Well, a simple 19 frames is all it takes for her to rev her engine up and get the schmoovin'. Abba gains Jealousy Gauge by hitting or making her opponent block her moves that use the key, and by successfully countering a move using her 214S counter. Now, let's talk about Jealous Rage. Jealous Rage Abba is a menace. She's tied with Chip for the fastest run in the game, but she doesn't need to accelerate. She has some of the best S and H normals in the game. She has an 18 frame overhead that high profiles basically everything in the game. A plus on block 2-hitting guard crush move that is armored from frame 9 onwards cannot be DPRC. A slide that goes far and low profiles many normals. A tracking plus 49 guard crush super that obscures the screen so she can go for unseeable mix-ups. And last but not least, she fuzzy overheads you anytime she has resource or gets you to block a jumping. Phew, that's pretty insane, right? But Mr. YouTuber, I can hear you cry. She has to go back to normal mode when she runs out of Jealousy Gauge. Oh right you are, observant commenter. So, let's talk about normal mode. When you look at normal mode, well, it looks pretty horrendous. I mean, that dash is abysmal, and the air dash might be worse and... Wait, what's that? I'm sure that's nothing. Anyways, getting back into it, her pressure is terrible too. I mean, look at these normals, and what the hell is that? And well, I mean, at least her defense has to suck, right? Man, what? Now, I'm not trying to say normal mode Abba is good or anything, but man is it not terrible. 214K and 236K represent a scary forward-moving low profile and high profile respectively, and both encourage the opponent to not throw buttons out. With that fear, Abba can either 236K RC into a high-low 50-50, poke into Blue Wild Assault for a free install, or stand back and take 19 frames to install herself and become the best character in the game. So she's really never out of the game. That is until she leaves Jealous Rage with 0 gauge left. If there was a true, near-crippling Abba weakness, it would definitely be the 0 resource normal mode situation. See, Abba has no ways of gaining gauge without interacting with the opponent, which means if you time your burst well or play good defense to weather the storm of Jealous Rage Abba, she can find herself in a situation where the onus is on her opponent to mess up, so she can play the game. Many characters like Bridget or Faust can kind of sit back and choose to interact on their own terms, and Abba doesn't have the speed to force an engagement herself and steal the game back. Still, Abba 2-touches Gold Lewis and 50-50s you for free, so remember, never feel bad about laming her out. I'm playing. Now, we have to ask the question, where does she stand at the meta? At the time of making this video, she's the second most recent character, and people aren't exactly sure how good she is quite yet. But on release week, the sentiment among strong players was that she might be the worst character in the game. These players were, understandably, very wrong. Right now, at the very least, everyone agrees that she is very strong, but it's unclear if she's just high tier or top tier. Players like Tiger Pup will need more time to prove her strength before we know for sure, but the future is looking pretty bright for her. Now, let's talk about fun. Abba is honestly really fun. She has a lot of room for creativity in both her routes and her setups, and making a comeback with her is honestly one of the best feelings of the game. Playing versus her is extremely frustrating for sure, but so is every Guilty Gear character, and her counterplay is moderately interesting and varied, so she's aight, even if I hate getting my pokes avoided by her K specials. Also, her design and theme are both fantastic, and her arcade mode is one of my absolute favorites in the game. Alright, y'all know the drill by now. Let's talk about her previous version, which, this time, is only plus R, as she skipped Xrd. Just like Elphelt, I'll come out and say it. This character is basically the same character as plus R Abba. Both characters are robbery characters at their core, and thrive off exploiting your opponent's mistakes, and using their install to steal rounds. Strive Abba keeps a similar version of her old install, a similar Rekka, the low profile, a modified overhead, key grab, but it's only a hit this time, her amazing normals and install, and her absurd damage and movement. The big things lacking from Strive Abba is that she doesn't lose health during install, her overhead isn't unblockable, don't ask. Donzai is different, but still strong. She lost some force break moves, and her forced uninstall isn't punishable anymore. But, even with all of that, she feels really similar to play and to fight as. Small anecdote, but in plus R, Abba has an install super called Goku Moroha that is plus on block, invul, starts combos, refunds health, and turns her into the best character in the game. No note about that, I just needed to share my pain with someone else. Anyways, overall, I'm gonna give Abba a solid A in terms of DLC characters. She's fun, she has varied counterplay, she has a high skill ceiling, she's strong but not too strong, she looks great, and she keeps a lot of her identity from plus R. This is arguably some of the best work Arxis has ever done in a returning DLC, and for that, I gotta give it up to them for real. And now, finally, it's time for the man of the hour.
Oh, how dandy.
My lovely wife is waiting. Let's make this quick.
Slayer's archetype is a bit hard to describe, but I always like to call him a gambler's character. He is constantly gambling, and when he wins big. Slayer Strive is a character with very pointed strengths and weaknesses. On one hand, he has some of the highest damage, but on the other, he has very poor defense and movement options. Slayer's defining special move is Dandy Step, which is a sway that either goes forward or back then forward, and has 4 follow-ups. One is an unreactable safe overhead, the other is an unreactable safe low, the other is a leap that is plush double digits and guard crushes, and last, but certainly not least, is Pile Bunker, a huge damage fast mid punch that is unsafe on block, but immediately wall sticks if hit near the wall. With this special move by itself, he has a built-in 50-50 that on counter hit or with meter leading to Slayer's most devastating combos, Pile Bunker loops. See, if Slayer hits you with the back hitbox using Pile Bunker, you get carried towards him, which allows him to continue his combos off Pile Bunker and stack on insane damage numbers for even trivial hits using meter. Outside of that, Slayer also has access to a forward-moving lunge attack called Mappa Hunch, that has a version that goes a small distance, but is usually safe to plus, and another version that goes basically full screen and can be spaced to be plus, and it's 16 frames with very minimal recovery. Slayer also has a command throw called Blood-Sucking Universe that restores a little bit of health, and gives Slayer a buff that makes his next hit counter it the opponent. His final special move is a follow-up to his backdash that serves as a pseudo-reversal, but unfortunately, the moment he presses it, he loses his invul on the backdash, which makes it a very subpar reversal option. It's also minus on hit. Now, I can tell you all about how he can't dash block, he has no meterless reversal, his backdash sucks, his offense has holes, but at the end of the day, none of that truly matters. Because do you know what the one true reality of this world is? Slayer can always rob you. And it's not like it's hard for him to rob you either. Kick Mappa Hunch is a 16-frame full-screen dash punch that if you fail to react to, either gives him a great knockdown or combo and counter it with meter. That, combined with his built-in 50-50 off Dandy, means you are always guessing, and you are always one coin flip away from getting robbed. And of course, Last Horizon also does 1,000,000 damage, so if Slayer catches you with 100 bar, it's over for you. His normals are also quite strong. With his very fast and far-hitting 5k, his low crushing 2H that nets him insane damage on counter hit, and his +4 forward advancing far slash to keep the pressure on. Now I do have to be fair to Slayer and point out that he does have some very poor defensive options, as his backdash loses invul before he moves anywhere, making it hard to use on defense. He doesn't have a real meterless reversal, and his fastest buttons are 5 frames, which is just average. This does open Slayer up to getting bullied, but with his high health, he can certainly take a bit of that. His neutral is also extremely linear, as even though K-Mappa is extremely strong, he can really only gain space using that and his dash jump. This isn't the end of the world, as he does have strong counter pokes, and K-Mappa is unreactable. But versus characters who can safely put out normals into the space in front of them, he does kinda struggle to force his way in. Currently, Slayer is the newest character in Strive, so it's a bit hard to talk about how strong he is, but the common opinion about him is that he's very strong, probably top of high tier or bottom of top tier. The consensus seems to be that he plays very well into the meta of the season, being as he has ridiculous damage and high health. Only time will tell though, but players like Razzo and Marvello will certainly be the premier people to watch to see how he shapes up in the future. Now let's talk about fun. And to be honest, Slayer is extremely fun, but the kind of fun that makes you feel grimy after. The things that he does and the damage he puts out is so absurd that you can't help but laugh. But being on the receiving end is extremely unfun. Most games I lose versus Slayer, my main note to myself is just to not get hit. And that's not really fun counterplay in my humble opinion. His design is amazing, and so is his theme, so they knocked out of the park with the presentation in this game, as always. Now, let's talk about Slayer's previous versions, mostly Xrd, as I know more about him there. Slayer is another example, just like Abba, where it feels like they really understood the essence of the character when they put him into this game. Slayer in Xrd is also an extremely volatile gambler's character that wins big on risky reads. Just like in Strive, he has Mappa Hunch and Dandy, just Dandy doesn't have the low follow-up like Strive, but has a mid that cancels into an overhead or his 2k, so it's basically the same built-in 50-50, just a little bit different. And of course, just like Strive, he has Pile Bunker to cash out for 1,000,000 damage. The biggest difference I noticed from Xrd to Strive is his dash. See, in old games, Slayer's forward dash not only had some invul on it, but the back dash could be jump cancel. This doesn't sound insane, until you consider that universally, you can cancel jump startup into special moves, which birthed the tech known as backdash canceling, where Slayer could jump cancel his backdash, then cancel the backdash into a special move, which transfers the invul from his backdash into whatever he wants. Want an invul command grab? Why not? This made Slayer a defensive monster, on top of his dominant damage and pressure, which is something you can't really say about Strive Slayer. But outside of that, they're both big damage machines and RPS monsters, so I think it works out in the end. Overall, I think I have to give Slayer a B+ in terms of DLC characters, as he is really fun to play, but extremely toxic to counterplay, and frankly, just plain unfun to fight. Despite that, his combos are saucy and he looks great. He takes a lot from his previous versions, so I have to rate him pretty highly overall. That finally wraps up my ratings of the whole Season 3 roster. Do you agree or disagree? Please let me know, I'd love to hear. As the final section of the video, I'd like to briefly mention trends from this season, as I think they can help us understand the thought process of the devs, and maybe where they want to push the game towards with the new character releases. And the elephant in the room here is obviously all of this canned high-low 50-50 mix. Literally every character in this patch has an instant overhead option, or even worse, a special move that just starts a 50-50 for you. This isn't the absolute end of the world, but it is a bit of a scary trend to see Mix being such a cheap commodity in this season, especially on such high damage characters. Speaking of damage specifically, Abba and Slayer are both the epitome of the Season 3 philosophy. Hit hard and have high health. They're both characters that RPS non-stop in neutral. And when they win that RPS, they win huge. And that game plan being backed up by such high health totals is a really scary thing to see, especially knowing the types of characters that are strong this season. I'm not sure if this is the intention of the dev team, but I'm definitely looking forward to more average health and damage characters in Season 4. Hopefully, crossing my fingers. For the good things though, I really have to commend the design team for each character and the composing of their music. Each character in Season 3 is a delight for the eyes and ears. On top of that, Abba and Slayer, while being a little bit problematic, are amazing adaptations of their previous versions, so hope to see more of that for returning characters like Dizzy or Venom when they show up eventually. Anyways, that's a long-winded way of saying, this season is pretty weird. The characters are all so cool and interesting, but also really frustrating to fight. But at the end of the day, that's Guilty Gear at its core. No matter if it's Xrd, Plus R, Vast Edge, I don't care. I love this game, and I love this season, and I had a blast chatting with you all about it. If you guys enjoyed, do all that YouTube stuff to help the vid, and let me know what other kind of Guilty Gear content you'd like to see me do. I'd love to do one of these for Season 2 and 1, and the Season 4 characters as they come out, so let me know if you'd like to see that too. Also, come follow my Twitch at twitch.tv/InfernoChim. I don't get to stream too much because of my injured hands, but I'd love to have y'all when I can. Anyways, I'll catch y'all on the next one. Peace out, everyone.